Suddenly, Sarah died. Abraham nearly slaughtered Isaac, and she was gone. What happened? This is one of the Torah's many unsolved mysteries. Our earliest rabbis, who lived 2,000 years ago, tried to come up with an explanation. In a powerful rabbinic interpretation of the binding of Isaac, Satan appears to Sarah disguised as Isaac, and Sarah says, "My son, what has your father done to you?" Isaac answers, "Father took me and raised me up to the mountains and brought me down into the valleys. He took me up to the top of one mountain, built an altar, arranged the woodpile, and placed the logs. He bound me on the altar and took a knife to slaughter me. If God had not told him, 'Do not raise your hand against the boy,' I would already be dead." Sarah heard this from Satan, whom she believed was Isaac, and she died. Though not explicit, this midrash suggests that the strong emotions Sarah felt when she learned that her husband almost slaughtered her son led to her immediate demise. The suddenness of Sarah's death points to shock, a woman so stunned by what she heard that it took her breath away forever. Who could envision a spouse, a parent, doing such a thing? It is unimaginable, right? Except that for Sarah, it might not have been so unimaginable. Abraham had disappointed her, failed her, hurt her, time and again. Twice, he pretended Sarah was his sister and gave her to other men to protect himself. Abraham never showed signs of regret. He never prayed for Sarah to conceive during her fertility struggles like his son Isaac did for his own wife. And he never acknowledged the anguish and pain that Sarah's infertility caused her. Abraham failed to consider that when Sarah demanded he expel her handmaiden Hagar along with Abraham and Hagar's son Ishmael, Sarah might have been seeking something else from him, like comfort or attention. And then, when God instructed Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, Abraham left early in the morning without saying a word. Sarah waited and waited for this one child, not becoming pregnant until she was 90 years old. Sarah must have died from something more than shock. I imagine Sarah day after day, year after year, holding on to hope that Abraham would change, that her life would change, because her life with him, her life period, was not what she had hoped for. Maybe when Sarah heard what happened to her one and only son, or what nearly happened to him, the disappointment she felt in her husband, the reality of her unmet dreams and expectations, was just too much to bear. Perhaps we can relate to Sarah as we do the work that the High Holy Days ask of us and take stock of our lives. To be sure, the stories about Sarah and Abraham's family are dramatic, exaggerated, and fantastical. When viewed through a contemporary lens, the members of this family commit inexcusable wrongs. Yet I know that for some of you, these wrongs hit much too close to home. For others, it might be a bit harder to see ourselves in these stories. But the emotions that exist in the text itself and between the lines are as real as anything we experience in our time. Interestingly, and surely not by chance, this family takes center stage in the Torah readings of Rosh HaShanah. And as painful and challenging as these biblical scenes may be, It is an opportunity to grapple with the stories of our ancestral family and find ourselves in them. Perhaps as we sit here and reflect this morning, someone or some situation in our life comes to mind that never seems to change. We hope against hope that this year will be the year that everything will be different. Perhaps this year my sister will actually listen and start asking me how I'm doing. It hurts me each time she does not ask about me. Perhaps this year my career will take off the way I always dreamed that it would. My work is not fulfilling. I'm not fulfilled. Perhaps this year my body will stop failing me. I want my body to sustain the rich and vibrant life I long for. Perhaps this year my parents will realize that they've each made mistakes and will finally reconcile. I'm so tired of telling each of them to go to couples counseling. Perhaps, I hope, you hope, we hope. What if hope is the problem? I know this might not be what you're expecting to hear from your newest rabbi on the Jewish New Year. After all, hope is at the core of who we are as a people, and for many of us, it's how we make it through hardships and struggle. So let me explain. The kind of hope I'm talking about, the problematic kind, is a hope that causes us to deny reality. Some psychologists call it relentless hope, a term coined by Harvard psychiatrist and professor Dr. Martha Stark. This kind of hope is a hope that drives us to relentlessly pursue an outcome that will never come to fruition, believing we have power or control. It is a hope that drives us to refuse to accept the limitations of others, believing that eventually they will change. Ironically, the relentless hope seems to serve as a way to avoid feeling pain. It actually subjects us to a lifetime of ongoing frustration and heartbreak. At the heart of this relentless hope is an inability, a refusal to grieve. Dr. Stark goes as far as to say that all people experience some form of relentless hope in their lives. This idea of relentless hope feels particularly poignant for me as I come out of 3 years immersed in the work of depolarization, of crossing religious, political, and racial divides. I became involved in depolarization work just a few months after witnessing and counter-protesting the 2017 violent Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, where I served as a rabbi for 4 years. I wanted to renew my hope in our country and in people who think, vote, or pray differently than I do. But upon reflection, I see that my initial hope was unrealistic in a way that I often see in the work of crossing divides, especially when people first begin. Many people, myself included, initially decide to build relationships across a divide because they believe that they have the power to change the people on the other side. And if they can't change the other people, they hold out hope that through conversations or dialogues, a workable compromise might emerge. I have participated in and facilitated numerous conversations across divides, and I have not seen people change one another's political views or come up with solutions. These lofty hopes and expectations for unrealistic outcomes can lead to pain and disappointment and impede opportunity for true progress in other ways. As I threw myself into the challenge of crossing divides in 2018, I had to work through the disappointment and grief that came with recognizing that my initial hopes might not be realized. Could I accept this reality? Isn't hoping and praying for a miracle, doing whatever it takes, the Jewish thing to do? Does accepting reality mean accepting defeat? Not always. The rabbis of the Talmud wrestled with the question of when and what to hope for. They expressed their hopes through prayer, and they often prayed to God to fulfill their material needs. To be sure, Talmudic rabbis prayed for and told stories of miracles. And yet, they also demonstrated a kind of pragmatism in their Talmudic discussions. In one such discussion, the rabbis who lived in a Middle Eastern climate asked, "From what time of year is it appropriate to begin mentioning rain in our liturgy?" The answer? We only request rain close to the rainy season. Yeah. In other words, be realistic. But being realistic does not mean casting all hope aside. During the dry season, we alter our prayers and instead mention the glistening droplets of dew. We modify our prayers and hopes to align with reality. This is what I had to do as I crossed divides. As I immersed myself more and more in the work of depolarization, I learned to align my hopes with reality. Today, I hope for something that I can achieve rather than something that I don't have the power to change, like the views of people who think differently than I do. I hope to discover and illuminate the commonalities that exist among all human beings. I hope to create deep relationships. I hope to hear other people's human stories and share mine. I have much more hope than I did in 2017. But it's only because my hopes are realistic. How so? I focus on the one thing I actually can change, my own actions and behavior. For me, there is nothing more hopeful than refusing to engage in ugly fact wars and instead participating in compassionate, open-hearted conversations. During these days of awe, I find myself considering other places in my life in which I need to redirect my hope. Perhaps right now you are thinking of someone or something that constantly disappoints you. Where in your life, where in each of our lives can we move from relentless hope to redirected hope? What would it look like to go through this process? First, we would find the courage to feel the deep pain of disappointment, the grief that comes with accepting that someone or something in our lives will likely never change. We would see that we can survive this disappointment and thrive without this person or situation changing. We might even begin to feel gratitude for something that the person or circumstance has given us, or come to realize that, in some ways, the person or situation has made us who we are. And then we could move from unrealistic and relentless hope to hope grounded in reality. We could work to change our own actions, our own behaviors, and in turn, show up in the world as better versions of ourselves, living our lives with more wholeness and peace. I'd like to think that maybe Sarah's story had a better ending, that maybe the rabbis of our earlier midrash got it wrong. What might support such a view? There are other mysteries surrounding Sarah's death. When the book of Genesis last mentions Sarah before the binding of Isaac, she's about 93 years old. When we next hear of Sarah after the binding of Isaac, we read that she died at 127. I know, these people lived a long time. Vayehiyu chaye Sarah 100 shana ve-20 shana ve-7 shanim shnei chaye Sarah. And the life of Sarah was 100 years and 20 years and 7 years, the years of the life of Sarah. The last three words, the years of Sarah's life, Shnei Chaye Sarah, are redundant, unless Shnei Chaye Sarah does not mean the years of Sarah's life as it is typically understood, but rather in an alternative reading of the Hebrew that there were Shnei lives of Sarah, 2 lives of Sarah. And what's more, Abraham buries Sarah in Hebron where she died, but Abraham himself is last seen in Beersheba. When we put it all together, questions and possibilities emerge. Were Sarah and Abraham living apart when she died? If Sarah did not die immediately following the binding of Isaac, what happened in the ensuing years, maybe even decades? What could it mean that she had two lives? I'd like to imagine that Sarah mourned the many disappointments that occurred in her life and accepted that she did not have the power to change them, that she stopped hoping for Abraham to be someone he was not, and instead aligned her hopes with reality. I'd like to think that Sarah did not die a disappointed person because she let go of her relentless hope. That maybe in her last 30 years she thrived, went out on her own journeys, that she healed old wounds, maybe apologized to Ishmael and in the process gained another son, that maybe Sarah even made peace with Hagar, finding a different kind of lifelong companion and friend. I'd like to think that Sarah learned to pray for rain in rain's time and dew in dew's time. I hope she did. I hope we will. I believe we can.